So back in 2015, a man promised to give $100,000 to this brand new charity.
All right.
And it was, this really bold show of commitment. But he never actually paid a dime. Like, he never wrote the check.
Not a single cent.
Exactly. And fast forward to today, and that exact same man's personal stake in that exact same charity is estimated to be worth between 20 and $30 billion.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. So the really obvious question here is, how does that happen? I mean, how do you go from a fake $100,000 pledge to a $30 billion fortune inside an organization that was, well, supposed to belong to the public?
It's the kind of math that just makes you stop and realize something fundamental is broken in the equation.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the math that lawyers are pulling apart in federal court right now.
They really are. And welcome to the deep dive, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
We know you, our listener. You're the learner. You want to cut through all the noise and just get straight to the aha moments without feeling totally overwhelmed by the jargon. So our mission today is to unpack day 5 of the Musk OpenAI trial, specifically the explosive testimony of OpenAI President Greg Brockman. We want to understand the staggering gap between OpenAI's stated origins as a, benevolent nonprofit and its current reality as a multi-billion-dollar corporate empire.
It's a huge gap.
It really is. And we've got a massive stack of sources today. We've got live update reports straight from the Oakland federal courtroom. We have the actual trial transcripts of Brockman's testimony. And we're also bringing in expert commentary from the prominent AI researcher Gary Marcus to help us make sense of all of this.
Now, before we dig into the emails, the ledgers, and those private diaries, which we will get to, we need to just state the obvious here.
Yeah, good point.
We are looking at highly charged, unproven allegations coming out of a very bitter, high-stakes lawsuit. I mean, we're talking about claims of fraud, embezzlement, massive financial deception. So our goal today isn't to play judge and jury for you.
Right, absolutely not.
We are not taking Elon Musk's side, and we aren't endorsing OpenAI's defenses either. We are simply cracking open these court transcripts to show you what is actually being argued in the room, just impartially reporting on the testimonies and the source documents themselves.
Exactly. We're just your guides to the paperwork here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you want to understand how a nonprofit gathers $30 billion in private equity, you actually can't start at the beginning.
No, you really can't.
You have to start by looking at how they are throwing money around right now. The sources detail this massive financial commitment that is raising some blaring legal red flags. Specifically, we need to talk about the Cerebras deal.
Oh, the Cerebras deal. Yeah, this is the perfect lens for this because it just shows the sheer scale of the leverage involved here.
Yeah.
But to see the actual legal issue, you really have to follow the timeline very carefully because the story actually starts way back in 2017.
Okay, 2017.
You're right. So according to the trial transcripts, Greg Brockman acquired a personal ownership stake in a hardware company called Cerebras, and Sam Altman separately also invested his own money into Cerebras. And in that exact same month in 2017, Brockman began aggressively pushing OpenAI to merge with, or basically utilize, Cerebras.
Wait, let me get this straight. As the founders of a nonprofit, they buy personal stakes in a third-party vendor.
Yeah.
And then immediately start trying to funnel the nonprofit's resources to that same vendor.
Yes.
I mean, that sounds like a massive conflict of interest from literally day one.
It is definitely the seed of a conflict, yeah. But you have to fast forward to December 2025 to see how that seed grew.
Okay.
Because in December 2025, OpenAI signs a staggering $10 billion deal with Cerebras.
$10 billion.
$10 billion. And on top of that, they loaned Cerebras another $1 billion in cash.
So $11 billion directed to a company the founders personally hold equity in.
Exactly.
Wow. But the timing of what happens next is what really caught my eye in the transcripts. Because by February 2026, which is just a couple of months after OpenAI makes this massive commitment, the market valuation of Cerebras absolutely explodes. It triples. It goes from $8 billion to $23 billion.
And I mean, why wouldn't it? If the premier AI company in the world just guaranteed you $10 billion in revenue, your value is going to skyrocket.
Right.
Which brings us to April 2026. OpenAI's financial commitment to Cerebras expands again, this time to over $20 billion, projected through the year 2029.
Unbelievable.
And in that very same month, April 2026, Cerebras files for an initial public offering and IPO at a potential valuation of $26.6 billion.
So Cerebras is going public, which means anyone who owns early private equity in that company is about to become insanely rich.
Yep.
Which brings us right back to Greg Brockman on the witness stand. I mean, he's an owner of Cerebras, but he is also a fiduciary of OpenAI.
Right, and the lawyers absolutely knew this.
Yes,
So
right.
under oath, they asked Brockman to point to a single email where he disclosed his personal ownership of Cerebras to Elon Musk.
Who was co-chairing the board at the time, right?
Exactly. Musk was co-chairing the board and funding the operation, while Brockman was advocating for these massive transactions.
And Brockman's response was just wild to me. He literally said, I do not believe an email that says that exists.
Yeah.
So then the lawyers pivot. Right. They ask, okay, did you disclose it in a chat? He says no. A text message. No. He completely admits he never disclosed his private financial interest.
Which leads to what might be the most jaw-dropping moment of the testimony.
Seriously.
The lawyer presses him and says, and yet you stood to gain personally if there was a transaction between OpenAI and Cerebras.
Yeah.
And Brockman's reply under oath was, I suppose so, but it wasn't something on my mind.
I am sorry, but I just have to stop right there.
Yeah.
How on earth does a person direct $20 billion to a company they secretly own a piece of and then look a judge in the eye and say, gaining personally just wasn't on my mind?
Yeah, no, it's hard to fathom.
I mean, let's just ground this in a real-world scenario for a second. Imagine being the treasurer of your local neighborhood watch, right? You're in charge of the neighborhood funds, and you decide to award a massive $20 billion security contract to a camera company. Right. But secretly, you own a huge stake in that camera company. And when the neighbors find out and take you to court, you just shrug and tell the judge, well, making money off the neighborhood just wasn't really on my mind.
Right, like it was just a coincidence.
It's just an absurd defense. So I have to ask, how does a fiduciary of a 501c3 tax-exempt charity legally justify this?
Well, what's fascinating here is how strictly California charitable trust law views this exact scenario.
Okay.
And let me tell you, it does not care one bit about what was or wasn't on someone's mind.
I imagine not.
Yeah, the law cares about mechanisms. And the mechanism we are looking at here is the textbook definition of self-dealing.
Break that down for us a bit. What is the actual legal mechanism of self-dealing when it comes to a charity?
So think of it this way. A 501c3 nonprofit is granted tax-exempt status because the state considers its assets to belong to the public trust.
Okay.
It exists for the public benefit, not to make a profit for private owners. And because there are no shareholders to keep an eye on the money, the law places a massive burden on the directors.
Right, they're fiduciaries.
Exactly. They have a strict, absolute legal duty of loyalty to the charity's mission. You literally cannot use the charity's resources to enrich yourself.
So by pumping $20 billion of the charity's leverage into Cerebras, they basically inflated Cerebras' value right before an IPO.
Exactly. The charity's money acted as a pump. The valuation tripled strictly because of the OpenAI commitment.
Wow.
And the IPO is the ultimate cash-out event. The undisclosed private equity holders, which includes Brockman, get to liquidate that artificially inflated value.
Right.
The public trust's money was basically used to pump their private bags. That is the core allegation of self-dealing here.
Okay, so if Brockman is directing $20 billion to Cerebras today, the immediate question that comes to my mind is, where does a charity even get $20 billion in leverage to begin with?
That is the million or billion-dollar question.
Right. I mean, nonprofits hold bake sales and charity galas. They don't usually have sovereign wealth fund levels of cash just lying around.
No, they don't.
But it turns out you don't necessarily need cash if you have the right bait.
Which brings us to the second major revelation from the courtroom, and it involves Brockman's really early fundraising tactics.
Yes, the phantom $100,000.
Right.
So the lawyers walked Brockman through his own emails on the witness stand, going back to the earliest days of OpenAI. And they brought up an email he sent to Marissa Mayer, the former CEO of Yahoo, asking her to invest.
Yeah.
And in this email, Brockman writes, I'm personally donating $100.
It's a very common psychological tactic in Silicon Valley, actually. You show a high-profile potential donor that you have skin in the game.
Oh, sure.
It establishes this sort of moral authority. Because if the founder is willing to bleed for the cause, the investor feels safer opening their wallet, you know?
It's exactly like a bartender putting a fake $20 bill in their own tip jar at the start of the night.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
You want the customers to think, oh, giving big money is just the standard here.
Okay.
Except, in this case, that tip jar eventually turned into a $30 billion corporation.
Exactly.
Because, under oath, the lawyer asks Brockman, you never donated any cash to OpenAI, did you? And Brockman just admits, I did not end up donating. That's true.
He just never wrote the check. But the illusion of that check was used as leverage.
Right.
And it wasn't just his own phantom money he was using. Brockman was also asked if he intentionally listed Elon Musk's name first when soliciting other donors, and he confirmed he did, expecting Musk's name to drive donations.
But here's where, the host in me has to ask a really serious question. Musk's lawyer asked Brockman if misrepresenting his own personal donation to leverage other people's money was morally bankrupt.
And what did he say?
He simply answered no.
No. Wow.
But look at the actual numbers here. Between 2015 and 2018, Elon Musk donated roughly $38 million in actual hard cash,
Right.
plus he paid for their office rent, plus he paid for their early computing infrastructure.
Yeah, he funded the whole early stage.
Right. And when Musk walked away from the board in 2018, he kept zero personal equity. Brockman, on the other hand, put in $0 of cash. Yet, by his own testimony, his current equity position is worth $20 to $30 billion.
Which leads right into the commentary provided by AI researcher Gary Marcus in our sources. Marcus looks at this exact discrepancy and argues that we aren't just looking at clever startup fundraising tactics anymore.
Right.
We are looking at a massive structural bait and switch.
Let's unpack the architecture of that.
Yeah.
Because how does a company legally pull off a bait and switch of that magnitude? How do you go from a nonprofit relying on donations to a corporate entity minting $30 billion private fortunes?
Well, the mechanism is actually quite complex, but Marcus breaks it down really well. The early company solicited all these donations from Musk, from Reid Hoffman, from others, by pitching itself strictly as a nonprofit dedicated to developing AI safely for the public benefit.
That was the bait.
Exactly, that was the bait. They gathered the capital, the massive computing power, and the top-tier talent all under the umbrella of a charity.
Right. But then, once the technology, specifically the architecture that would eventually become ChatGPT, started showing massive commercial promise, the computing costs skyrocketed.
Oh, yeah?
You can't run these massive AI models on a few laptops, right? You need supercomputers. Yeah. So they created this capped profit subsidiary that sat underneath the nonprofit board. They argued they needed this for-profit arm to raise the billions necessary to buy the compute power. And that is the switch. They took the research and the talent funded by charity and essentially ported it into a vehicle that could issue private equity.
And Gary Marcus makes a really brilliant point here, because it's so easy to frame this trial as just Elon Musk being bitter that he missed out on the trillion-dollar AI boom.
Sure.
But Marcus emphasizes that this legal battle extends far beyond one billionaire's bruised ego. Who else is actually harmed by this bait and switch?
Marcus points out a whole chain of victims, actually. First, you have other early donors who genuinely thought they were giving to a public charity, not funding a future tech monopoly.
Second, you have the early employees.
Right, the researchers.
Yeah, many brilliant researchers took massive pay cuts to work at OpenAI in the early days because they really believed in the public mission. They were sold on the idea of protecting humanity, not making a few executives billionaires.
And then, of course, there's the state of California.
Exactly. The state of California grants specific, highly valuable tax exemptions and legal privileges to charities. If an organization uses those privileges to build a product and then flips the structure to privately profit from that product, the state, and by extension, the taxpayers have been entirely misled.
Yeah.
Marcus uses Brockman's $0 investment, resulting in a multi-billion-dollar stake, to highlight that the structural governance of these AI companies might be fundamentally deceptive.
So we have this picture of external deception, right? Misleading the donors, misleading the employees, misleading the state with this tightly controlled public benefit narrative.
Yeah.
But that begs the question, what was happening internally? If the external face was this noble charity, what was the culture like behind closed doors between the co-founders?
Well, the sources show that the internal alignment was shifting very early on, long before the official pivot to a for-profit model. We really have to look at the hidden compensations that were surfacing internally.
Okay.
According to the live update reports from the trial, back in 2017, which, remember, is the exact same year the Cerebra's investments were happening, Sam Altman provided Greg Brockman with a $10 million stake in Altman's own family office.
Okay, we need to pause and define family office for a second here, because that sounds like, I don't know, a room in someone's house where you keep a printer.
Yeah.
But in billionaire speak, it is something entirely different.
Oh, absolutely. A family office is essentially a private wealth management advisory firm. It is a private investment company built specifically to manage the investments and trusts of a single ultra-high net worth individual or family.
Right.
So Altman's family office is his own personal investment vehicle.
And he just hands Brockman a $10 million piece of it, just
Mhm.
as compensation.
Yep.
And the reports confirm that Elon Musk, who is co-chairing the board and funding the company, was not directly informed of this side deal. So why is that such a big deal from a governance perspective?
Because it completely compromises board independence. Court documents show that an advisor to Musk discovered this side deal and immediately flagged it.
Oh, wow.
The advisor explicitly warned Musk that giving Brockman a $10 million stake in Altman's personal wealth vehicle would create a direct financial allegiance. Brockman would become loyal to Altman rather than loyal to the independent public action of OpenAI.
And Musk's reaction in the emails is so perfectly emblematic of tech founder communication. He forwarded that massive warning email directly to Brockman and added exactly 2 characters, 2 question marks. Just like, explain this.
It perfectly illustrates that there were deep internal suspicions about conflicts of interest years before the public ever knew about the structural changes.
But honestly, the 2 question marks are nothing compared to the absolute bombshell of the trial.
Oh, yeah.
We are talking about the most explosive piece of evidence entered into the record. Greg Brockman's personal journals from the founding period of the company were read aloud in court.
In his own handwriting.
Yes. In his own private diary, Brockman described OpenAI's stated non-profit mission as a lie.
Just let that sit for a moment. The foundational document of the company, its tax-exempt status, its promise to the public to develop AI safely for humanity, described by its own president in private as a lie.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, so I want to play devil's advocate for a second. Let's look at the psychology of a startup founder who is trying to build something unprecedented, right?
Okay.
Does writing down that the mission is a lie in your diary absolutely prove malicious, premeditated fraud from day one? Or could it be the tragic realization of a founder looking at the cost of servers?
I see what you mean.
Like, is it possible he woke up one day, realized that artificial general intelligence was going to require hundreds of billions of dollars in compute hardware, and realized a nonprofit structure simply could not survive that financial reality?
Right.
Could a lie just be the despair of a founder realizing their original dream is dead?
It's a fair question, and the defense will certainly try to frame it as founder despair rather than a grand conspiracy.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture and look at the legal analysis in our sources, the commentators are not buying the despair angle at all.
Why not?
Because you cannot view the journal entry in a vacuum. You have to look at the whole timeline.
Yeah.
You have the journal entry calling it a lie, paired with the phantom $100,000 donation, paired with the secret $10 million family office stake, paired with the undisclosed Cerebra's equity.
Wow, yeah, when you stack it up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you stack all of those mechanisms together, it doesn't look like panic. It looks like a plan.
And the sources note that during his testimony, Brockman did not come across as a tragic founder. His repeated evasion of serious questions, his inability to recall basic disclosures, his voice actually cracking on the stand.
Yeah, the commentator said he appeared almost like a hostile witness in his own defense.
Which is why the legal experts in the sources start using incredibly heavy terminology. They actually use the phrase criminal intent to defraud.
Yes.
They suggest the diary entries and the emails point toward a coordinated effort to misappropriate charitable assets.
But we do have to clarify the stakes here, because we are talking about a civil trial right now.
Right.
This is Musk suing them over contracts and fiduciary duty. There is no jail time at stake in a civil trial.
That's correct. A civil trial is a dispute over money, equity, and business direction. The worst that happens here is massive financial penalties or forced restructuring.
Right.
However, the legal experts cited in the source material point out a massive looming shadow over these proceedings. Civil trials unearth evidence. And if the evidence uncovered here, the diaries, the phantom donations, the self-dealing, were to be taken up by a federal prosecutor or the state attorney general, the narrative changes entirely.
We'd be moving from civil lawsuits to criminal indictments.
Yes. We are talking about potential felonies here: wire fraud, mail fraud, and the criminal embezzlement of charitable assets.
And the sources note that if prosecuted and convicted for those specific felonies, a person could face up to 25 years in federal prison.
25 years.
Which completely changes the reality of what we are watching. It's no longer just billionaires squabbling over pie charts. It is severe legal peril.
It absolutely is. And it frames a recent very severe warning from Elon Musk in an entirely new light. According to the court documents, Musk recently offered Brockman and Altman a chance to settle this whole thing out of court.
Yeah.
And his warning to them was chillingly direct. He wrote, "By the end of this week, You and Sam will be the most hated men in America. If you insist, so it will be.
Wow. I mean, he wasn't just threatening them with bad PR, he was threatening to expose the internal architecture of their wealth.
Exactly.
And the commentators in our sources basically conclude that given how damning Brockman's testimony has been so far, taking Musk's advice to settle might be their smartest move to stop the bleeding.
Especially considering Brockman is scheduled to take the stand again, and as the reports suggest, the questioning is only going to get more grueling as they dig deeper into the financial mechanics.
It really is.
It's so easy to look at all of this, the diaries, the phantom donations, the billion-dollar self-dealing, and think, who cares about a couple of billionaires fighting over money in a courtroom?
Right. It feels completely disconnected from our daily lives.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why should you care? Because the reality is, it couldn't be more relevant. These are the individuals building the literal architecture of our future.
Absolutely.
Large language models, the push for artificial general intelligence, these are technologies that are going to reshape medicine, economics, the job market, and human communication. If the corporate governance of the company leading this charge is fundamentally broken, it directly impacts the level of trust we can place in the technology they are deploying into our lives.
This raises an important question, and it's the thought we want to leave everyone with today.
Yeah.
Throughout the trial transcripts and the expert analysis, we've seen a massive systemic divergence between OpenAI's public promises and its leaders' private equity maneuvers.
Right.
The financial foundation of the company appears to have been built on a very lucrative bait and switch. So if the very financial and legal foundation of the world's leading AI company was built on deception, if the early talent and capital were gathered under false pretenses, what does that mean for the safety guidelines and the ethical alignment promises they are making about the AI itself?
That's the real issue.
If a company's president writes in his diary that their core structural mission was a lie, can you possibly trust that company to build a truthful machine?
If the blueprints are faked, you just don't trust the building. It is a profound question, and one we are all going to have to watch unfold, both in the courtroom and in the technology we are using every single day.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We warmly invite you to return next time as we grab another stack of sources and try to make sense of the world together.